So first up, my story. I'm owner of Power versus Force Coaching. I'm also a former hockey player myself. I'm an energy coach, and what I do is I have a systematic approach to creating more consciousness and awareness, and some people call that mindfulness. As well, I've been able to merge my hockey passion with sports performance. And one of the opportunity that's actually lent me is to be able to work with professional hockey players, junior players, as well as minor hockey players, along with parents and coaches as well. So the first, I want to start off with a question, and the question that really begs to be answered is, what makes the difference between a hockey player who is overthinking and forcing their game, and one who's actually in the zone and effectively executing your game plan? Before I answer that question, I have a question for you guys. Did you ever play for a coach that you would go through a brick wall for? And if you have, please put up your hand. That's amazing. Put them down for a sec. The reason some of you guys are here are because of those coaches. And the answer to that question I asked you, was that you're the difference. You're the difference. You're the difference. You guys are the difference of why players perform at that level. Today's goal and my intention is to share with you one specific mental performance tool that enable you to transform fear into trust within you and also your players. CORE. CORE performance is the process for mastery of mental performance. The CORE stands for the core beliefs within our subconscious. The E stands for energy. And this energy really is the thoughts and feelings that we actually emit. Performance is the results of decisions that are made in the moment, and dynamics is the energy interplay. And we all know that energy exists because hockey isn't just all about emotions, it's about energy. We know when the momentum and we experience it. First up, the energetic self-perception chart is a chart that was developed by a group out of New York called IPEC, and it's a systematic approach to being able to transform negative energies into positive energies. So as you can see, there's actually 7 levels of energy that we emit, and these energies are actually originated by the thoughts, even more specifically, the beliefs that we have about a particular situation. And these 7 levels of energy represent your 7 levels of consciousness, awareness, engagement, and also confidence. So you'll find that at the lower energy levels of 1 and 2 is where you're going to find fear. At the higher energy levels, the 5, 6, and 7, you're going to find the states of being that are associated with high performance as being in the flow and experiencing zone moments. And one thing I want to tell you is that even though it looks really simple, I could take the next 3 hours and explain this all to you guys, but for the sake of time and the limited time that we have, I'm just going to basically explain that to you. If you have any other questions, we'll be available there after the presentation. So first up, one of the things that we understand that coaching is not as personal as we think it is. However, we're responsible for more than we think we are. And think about this, because when we take things personal is when we will drop into anger, frustration, and judgment. So a coach that actually understands this and gets this is a coach that's able to manage his own energy and his own emotional management. And the responsibility, we're going to be talking about that right now. Before we start, let's talk about performance. It's an equation of performance. Performance equals potential minus interference. Performance are the results of actions made in the moment. The quality of those actions are affected by potential, which are all the skills, talents, and even today we have all these skill coaches. So these are all the skills that the players have, that they acquire over the years, the talents. Some kids are more talented, but also the ability to tap into the intuition and creativity. Because one thing we understand about hockey is that hockey isn't about thinking. Thinking happens at practice, it happens in the video game, it happens in the dressing room. When players are actually out on the ice, it's about being. Because in hockey, if you're thinking when you're out there, you're going to be a step behind. It's teaching these guys to be unconsciously competent. And what happens is that when they get distracted, which is the interference, these distractions come from stress reactions that decrease performance by shifting them into past or future thinking. And what we've discovered, and we know for a fact now scientifically, that when you go into horizontal thinking, past or future, it requires energy. And since energy cannot be created or destroyed, it has to come from somewhere. It can only be shifted or transformed. So if your potential, if you're totally in the moment and that's a 10, and all of a sudden you get stressed out, that all of a sudden that thinking of past or future comes out of the present moment. So instead of a 10, you're at a 9, you're at an 8, and before you know it, you're only half in the actual present moment where the actual game is happening. So we had the whole fear, and we had the trust this weekend. It's been a lot about trust, it's about relationships. And what I'm going to do and what I'm going to share with you right now, for some of you guys, it's going to be a breakthrough. For other you guys, you live it. You embody this already. You're already doing this unconsciously competent. But for the others, this is going to be something new. And when you get this, it will affect the performance of your team and the quality of performance you're going to get day in, day out. Because if you can get your players into that zone, into executing your game plan more often, then you're going to find a greater level of success. So fear and trust are different opposing energies. And like I mentioned, fear is at the lower energy levels of consciousness and awareness. Trust is up at the higher levels of consciousness and awareness, so at the higher energy levels. One of the things that, if you really have to explain it a little bit further, if you imagine an energetic teeter-totter, fear on one side, trust on the other. When fear goes up, trust goes down. When trust goes up, fear goes down. So when fear goes up, what trust goes down? Well, trust in your players, trust in your team, trust in the process, trust in yourselves. A lot of you guys as coaches understand too is that you're more likely intuitively to play players that you trust. I had a coach that I noticed, and I was working with him, I noticed that he played basically 3 lines, and the 4th line rarely played. So I just brought it to his attention. And awareness is really key to really making some changes. And he said, well, Walt, the reason why I don't play him is I don't trust him. And the reason why you don't trust him is because we have an industry that's all about wins and losses. It's about the outcome performance. So what happens is that because of his trust, or lack of trust, or fear, he wasn't playing his 4th line. By the end of the season, he acquired a player that he really trusted, that he was able to put on the 4th line. The 4th line started producing, and by the end of the season, by playing those 4th liners, he was able to win a regular season division championship. And all that happened is that he became aware, he made the shift. And he made the difference. So although fear and trust are both influenced by external factors, it is a choice. We actually choose to focus, whatever we choose to focus on, if we choose to focus on fear, we're going to make decisions based on fear. If we choose trust, we're going to make it based on trust. Although there's a lot of things out of our control, we have a conscious choice as to what we want. Most people, in general, not only coaches, will make choices in the moment based on the past or fear for the future. Being able to make conscious choices of what's happening right now and knowing that you have that power will increase the quality of your performance, not only in yourself, but in your players. So let's talk about fear. A couple points about fear. Fear, like I mentioned, is level 1 and level 2, lowest level of energy. Fear cannot exist in the moment. And the reason why fear cannot exist in the moment, it requires horizontal thinking. It requires a past or a future in order to exist. In the moment, all we ever have are situations. And one thing that we know about ourselves is we can handle situations. And how do I know that? Because all of you guys are still here. And you're still coaching. So one of the things is that when you have fear, you're taking yourself out of the present moment. Fear also shuts down communication. When players are afraid of you, they won't talk to you. So if you're constantly yelling and screaming at your players, and then wonder when you ask them questions, they give you one-word answers. It's because fear shuts down their engagement, which is, again, level 1 or 2. One of the indicators is when a player is shut down, he's down at the lowest level of awareness, consciousness, and mindfulness. Fear is also about control and discipline. When a coach is in a state of fear, he's going to resort to his programming. And if you notice, all the guys that put up their hands as far as coaches they would go through a brick wall for, there's a lot of you guys that didn't put up your hand. Either you didn't play the game, or if you did play the game, you were subject to those coaches that always punished you and disciplined you and bagged skates and what have you. And some of you guys may be doing this because you want to give these young people a different experience because it mattered to you. Young people matter to you. So the other thing about fear is that fear shifts focus to negative outcomes. Fear has to do with, it creates anxiety in the body, it creates worry. And the one thing that about fear and worry is that it's not the truth. And the reason why it's not the truth is because it hasn't happened yet. So I'll say it again. Fear and worry and anxiety cannot be the truth because it hasn't happened yet. And that's why it's just a possibility. And if it's just a possibility, worry, somebody once said, is having faith into what you don't want to have happen. If we're going to have faith in something, why don't we have faith into what we want to have happen? Why don't we have faith in our players? Why don't we have faith in our assistant coaches? Why don't we have faith in the process? And we got a choice, and we can choose faith. Trust builds relationships. I've talked to a few guys here that get this. You have systems that are successful on the score sheet, but really what it is because you've built relationships. Trust opens up the lines of communication. When players trust you, they'll talk to you. When players trust you, they will go through a brick wall for you. Many of you guys know that because I myself know that because there's coaches, I would go through a brick wall, I would go through a steel wall for these guys because these guys trusted me. They didn't punish me. I was a single, my father left when I was 15. I was with a single mom. I had a single hockey mom. I didn't have a role model. I had a coach that just believed in me so much that I would do anything for this coach. Trust motivates, inspires, and influences. So as opposed to disciplining and punishing, when you trust and you're coming from coaching from a state of trust, you're motivating and you're inspiring and you're influencing rather than having control and punishing you guys. And when you do that kind of, when you coach from that perspective, players, what happens to players? They get inspired, they get motivated, and they're going to follow your game plan, and they're going to want to go through a brick wall for you. And the thing is, as well, is that trust creates win-win opportunities. Trust, when a player trusts you, he'll go from the second line to the fourth line. Players will block shots for you. They will throw themselves in harm's way. When they trust you, when they trust the process, and they know that you care, that old saying is that people don't care how much you know, but until they know how much you care. And trust is really the foundation of that. So the solution, the one tool that I promised you is that the one tool is entrainment. Entrainment is a teachable skill in which fear is transformed into trust. Trust because energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can be transformed or changed. When a coach or a player is in a higher anabolic, or let's just say positive energy state, they will actually raise the energy level of those around them to their energy, and the result will be increased awareness, engagement, and effectiveness. That example that I used about the coach that got that one player at the end of the season, it just so happened that I was actually playing with that player. I mean, not playing with him, I was coaching him. And this team went into the playoffs, and they were involved in the longest overtime game in CHL history. It went for a total of 5 overtime periods. So they had the regular game and then 5 overtime periods. 2 minutes left in the game, this player got himself on a breakaway. There hadn't been a breakaway the whole game. He got himself on a breakaway, and he was in the zone. By the time that he hit the offensive team's blue line, he said to me, "Walt, I knew I was going to score." He was in that high state. He knew he was going to score, and guess what happened? Not only did he score, it was like over the left shoulder, a goal scorer's goal, and it looked effortless. And that's what power really is. Power is effortless. Force is about really just, it really feels like you're working through mud. When you truly have power, it is effortless. That's what the zone's all about, and that's what flow's all about. So you know that too. When you're coaching from trust, everything flows. When you get fearful about your job or about the wins and losses, it feels like work. And for many of you guys, you're not getting paid for this. So imagine that. If you're in that energy, you're affecting the players that are playing for you. So how is this accomplished? This tool is actually accomplished in 2 ways. One, by focusing on becoming consciously aware of your negative and fearful thoughts, then shift your focus from past and future into the present moment. So what you want to do is whenever you're feeling this, and you'll know when you're feeling it because catabolic or negative energy has an effect physically. On a hockey player, he tightens his stick. On a coach, you feel it in your gut. You feel that anger, you feel that frustration. So physically you could feel it, and fear also produces fight, flight, or freeze reactions in the body. You get the adrenaline dumps. You will also get the sensing that something's not right. And once you know that, and you can become aware that you're actually thinking in the past or the future, you can in fact bring yourself back into the present moment, and you're raising your energy, and you'll notice your players will actually feed off that. Just like when you get angry, you notice when a coach starts yelling at the ref, you get even the players starting to yell. And then, okay, guys, and then you've got to sort of work with the guys. That's because they're feeding off your energy. The other thing is to intentionally create an anabolic and positive team environment by being trustful. Be a trustful coach. Be a man of your word. Be impeccable with your word. Right? If you promise something to your players, back it up. If you tell them, if you do this, I'll give you more ice, give more ice time. Be somebody that can be trustful. So when you create this environment, you create trust in the process. You also have trust in your players and your staff, and you trust in yourself and in your hockey instincts. Because as players as well, when they're out playing, it's not about thinking. When you're coaching, you got to know which lines are going out, who you want to play. And we know that if you're thinking, all of a sudden, play goes by. So you yourselves have to be in the zone. You yourselves have to be in flow. So when you're in this state of being, that higher state, you're being more effective. And you're affecting, and your team will follow your energy. In the end, what it really all comes down to, and what we talked about this whole weekend about relationships and family, it's not about what you need to do, because we live in the Google generation. You come to places like this where guys are amazing. What it comes down to, it's not what you need to do, it's about who you need to be for your players. Who are you being? And in the end, for your players, it's not about whether they make the NHL, because only less than 1% ever get to a level. It's about who your players become as a result of your influence on them. And for some of you guys, this is a breakthrough. For some other you guys, I just want to applaud, because there's many coaches here that have stepped in the gap without pay because they believe in young men. They believe in having an influence. And because of that, we are changing young people's lives one shift at a time.